Enrichment. Masses, dances, and love songs. Music in the Renaissance. The Renaissance was a time of discovery, exploration, and invention. In other words, a time of great change. You've seen how the arts of painting and sculpture changed during the Renaissance. What about music? Music changed too. During the Middle Ages, music was especially important in churches and monasteries, where priests, monks, and nuns sang praises to God. Generally, they sang religious words in Latin, and they all sang the same melody. To our modern-day ears, this kind of singing, known as plain song or plain chant, or chant for short, can sound mysterious, but also soothing. During the Renaissance, as more and more people became interested in science, philosophy, paintings, and sculpture, they also became more interested in music. These people were not just monks or scholars. They were the merchants and their families in the cities, as well as the nobility, the people of the upper classes in courts throughout Europe. More people wanted to enjoy music in their homes. The middle class joined the nobility in thinking that for a person to be well-rounded and well-educated, it was important to know how to read music and be able to sing. The invention of the printing press made it possible to distribute sheet music to those who wanted to learn how to play traditional as well as contemporary compositions. Music was becoming more and more a matter of personal expression. Some of these people began to experiment with and further develop different ways of singing. For example, when different singers sing different notes at the same time, and the notes come together to produce a pleasing sound, the singers are said to be singing in harmony. This combining of voices singing different melodies in harmony is called polyphony, a word which comes from Greek words meaning many voices. This style of harmonizing was very popular during the Renaissance. Also during the Renaissance, many musicians started writing their own music. Some became famous composers who traveled from court to court and city to city. This was something new. Back in the Middle Ages, composers often remained unknown. We know of only a few medieval composers, but there are many famous Renaissance composers. Most of them wrote both sacred music, or music for the church, and secular music, music for everyday life. Sacred music. One of the most important forms of sacred music existed within the Mass, the Catholic Church service that celebrates Jesus' Last Supper and death on the cross. When the words to the Mass, which were in Latin, were sung by a small group or a large choir, they could sound very beautiful. Composers sometimes wrote musical compositions for Masses in a style called a cappella, which means in the style of the chapel. A cappella works were written to be sung by voices alone, without instruments, so the words could be clearly heard and understood. Today, we still use the term a cappella to describe any kind of choral music sung without instruments playing along. Josquin des Près, who was born around 1450 CE, wrote nearly 20 sacred compositions for Masses. He was widely admired as one of the greatest composers of the Renaissance. He came from what is now the Netherlands, but mostly worked as a singer and composer for princes and the Pope in Italy. Secular music. Songs and dances. Josquin des Près didn't just write sacred music. He also wrote secular music, music that people would enjoy outside of church. Secular music during the Renaissance included songs that had to do with love or told amusing stories. One song des Près wrote is called Faute d'argent, which, if you loosely translate the French title, means I need money. Many popular Renaissance songs were written for 4 or 5 voices and sung in polyphony. These songs were called madrigals. Like popular songs today, many madrigals were about, what would you guess? Yes, love, of course. The Italian composer, known as Palestrina, wrote 4 books of madrigals. But Palestrina was mainly a composer of sacred music. He wrote more than 90 masses. He once said, "I blush and grieve," about writing the madrigals. Aside from singing, people also liked to dance. At the courts of princes and kings, dances were a favorite occasion. Renaissance composers wrote a lot of dance music. Dance music was written for instruments, not voices. Often dances were played in pairs, one slow and one fast. For example, first the musicians might play a pavane, a slow and formal dance that included many bows and curtsies. Then they would play a galliard, a lively dance in which the men would jump in the air. New instruments and lute songs. One of the most popular instruments during the Renaissance was the lute, which was something like a modern-day guitar. The lute was not a new instrument. It was inspired by an Arab instrument called the oud. The lute sounds sweet and gentle, perfect for love songs. The greatest composer of lute music was probably John Dowland, who was born in England in 1563 CE. One of his lute tunes, called Lacrimae, became the most popular tune of his time all over Europe. Dowland also wrote many short songs for one singer accompanied by a lute. Many of these lute songs were sad and melancholy, with titles like Sorrow Stay and In Darkness Let Me Dwell. Even Dowland's #1 hit, Lacrimae, was a sad-sounding melody, which makes sense because the word lacrimae is Latin for tears. Sheet music. In the monasteries, monks developed the first system for writing music. Most of the music that was sung and played outside the churches was not written.